He was a quiet PhD student. Studied criminology. Wrote about the mind of a killer. And then, according to prosecutors, he became the very thing he studied. On a freezing November night in 2022, four University of Idaho students were brutally murdered in their sleep. No signs of forced entry. No witnesses. No screams. Two roommates lived through it, without even realizing what had happened above. The killer had moved in the darkness. Left no immediate trace. The weapon was never recovered. And for weeks, America had no idea who could have done something so brutal, so precise. Until a name surfaced, Bryan Kohberger. He wasn't a drifter. He wasn't hiding in the woods or living off the grid. He was still attending lectures while the country searched for the person responsible. If you think you've heard everything about this case, think again. Subscribe now and stay with us, because what you're about to hear is more than a murder story. It's a lesson in deception, control, and the darkness that can hide behind a textbook smile. The crime took place at 1122 King Road, a well-known college rental house just off campus in Moscow, Idaho. Inside that home were 6 students. 4 would not survive the night. Kaylee Goncalves and Madison Mogan, both 21, were childhood best friends. They were charismatic, inseparable, and weeks away from graduating. Madison was studying marketing. Kaylee had just bought a new car. She was preparing for a move to Texas. Xana Kernadel, 20, was known for her wit and laughter. She was a junior marketing major and loved yoga and concerts. Ethan Chapin, also 20, was a triplet. He was outgoing and easy to love. He played sports, loved his siblings, and was dating Xana. That night, he was sleeping over at her place. The 4 had spent the evening like many college students do, hanging out, eating late-night food, scrolling through social media. Their final known movements were captured on camera around 2 a.m. By 4:30 a.m., they were dead. Investigators say the killer entered quietly. He likely passed through an unlocked sliding glass door and moved from room to room. Madison and Kaylee were found in the same bed. Xana was still awake. Evidence shows she had ordered DoorDash minutes before the attack. She had defensive wounds. Ethan was likely killed trying to protect her. The attack was brutal. Deep wounds. Blood was found seeping through the walls by morning. Yet, despite the ferocity, the killer left behind almost nothing. No bloody footprints. No weapon. No fingerprints. The 2 surviving roommates, Bethany and Dylan, stayed on the first floor. Dylan told police she saw a figure dressed in black walk past her. He wore a mask. Believing it was an intruder, she locked her door. The horror above remained undiscovered until nearly noon the next day. Moscow had never seen anything like this. It's a quiet town. Less than 30,000 residents. Known for its wheat fields and the rhythmic buzz of college life. But after the murders, everything changed. Students left campus in droves. Parents demanded action. Locals avoided the area around King Road. National media set up on the street. And still, police remained silent. The public grew restless. Was it a serial killer? A crime of passion? A stalker? Social media detectives flooded TikTok, YouTube, Reddit, each offering theories more disturbing than the last. Behind the scenes, police were struggling to build a case. But then came a break. In the room where Madison was found, investigators discovered a tan leather knife sheath, the kind used for military-style combat knives. On the snap, they found a single DNA sample. It wasn't enough for a name. But it was enough to start looking. Around the same time, detectives were reviewing security footage from homes and businesses around King Road. A white Hyundai Elantra appeared over and over again, circling the block, turning around, returning, leaving, coming back. At least 12 times between 2:30 and 4:20 a.m. It was suspicious. Too consistent to be random. Eventually, police identified the car's owner, Bryan Kohberger, a 28-year-old criminology PhD student at Washington State University, just across the border in Pullman, Washington. A 15-minute drive. He grew up in Pennsylvania. Those who knew him say he was socially awkward. Intelligent, but isolated. He struggled with addiction as a teen, lost weight, changed his life, and went on to study psychology and criminal justice. Kohberger had no alibi for the hours of the murder. And when police traced his phone records, they discovered something chilling. His phone had pinged near the victim's house a dozen times in the weeks leading up to the attack. Why was he there? Was he scouting? Watching? Then came the final clue: trash. FBI agents went through the garbage outside the Kohberger family home in Pennsylvania, where he had gone for the holidays. They recovered DNA from his father. It matched the sample on the knife sheath, and further investigation confirmed that Bryan has purchased a Ka-Bar knife sheath from Amazon in March 2022. On December 30, 2022, Bryan Kohberger was arrested and charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of burglary. He was extradited to Idaho in early January. But as the public stared at his mugshot, one question grew louder. Why did he do it? Bryan Kohberger didn't run. He didn't confess. He didn't lash out or break down. He went back to class. After the murders, classmates said he was more engaged than ever. He participated in classroom discussions, took part in conversations about the Idaho murders, and continued to grade undergraduate papers as a teaching assistant. One student recalled that during a conversation about the killings, Kohberger became animated, intensely focused, almost excited. He talked about the crime scene layout, the probable time of death, and the challenges investigators might face collecting evidence. It wasn't the conversation itself that disturbed them, it was his tone. To them, he sounded like someone enjoying the challenge. And this is what unsettles so many about the Bryan Kohberger case. Because it's not just a story of murder, it's a story about someone who might have tried to turn real life into a case study. A game. A thesis. Kohberger wasn't just studying criminology. He was immersed in it. Consumed by it. At Washington State University, he was known as the student who asked too many questions. He was intelligent, no one doubted that, but his obsession with power dynamics and forensic loopholes raised red flags for some professors. He had recently completed a master's degree in criminal justice at DeSales University in Pennsylvania, where he reportedly studied under a psychologist known for researching serial killers. But more chilling than his academic path was a Reddit post he authored under the alias, Criminology Student. Months before the murders, Kohberger posted a public questionnaire titled, "Research Participation Needed, Understanding the Thoughts and Feelings of Criminal Offenders." In it, he asked respondents to describe how they felt before, during, and after committing a crime. What emotions they experienced. What they were thinking at the moment of their offense. His online activity suggests a man who lived in both worlds, the academic and the hypothetical. But there were cracks. One classmate said he would sometimes dominate conversations, trying to sound like the smartest person in the room. Others said he was difficult to connect with, and often confrontational. A woman who went on a Tinder date with him said he grew cold and aggressive after being turned down. He reportedly followed her to her car and called her repeatedly after the date. In his WSU apartment, investigators found black gloves, plastic bags, dark clothing, boots with unique soles, a stained mattress cover, a computer tower. They also seized a possible manifesto, though its contents have not been made public. Some suspect it may outline his personal philosophy, a justification, or worse, a fantasy. Prosecutors allege that Kohberger began watching the house long before the murders, as cell phone records place him in the area at least a dozen times prior. Authorities haven't confirmed a connection. On the night of the murders, his phone was turned off between 2:47 a.m. and 4:48 a.m. That window aligned almost perfectly with the estimated time of death. He'd also searched for crime stories after the murders. Investigators allege that he monitored media coverage and may have been following online discussions about the case. One disturbing detail: during his drive back to Pullman, Kohberger reportedly took a long, winding route, one that avoided major highways. As if trying to cover his tracks. Was he trying to see what had been discovered? Or was he simply reliving the crime? One question remains unanswered: why these 4 students? There's no confirmed link between Kohberger and the victims. But internet sleuths have speculated that he may have followed some of them on social media or seen them around campus. There are unverified claims that he had messaged at least one of the women on Instagram. But so far, law enforcement has not officially disclosed whether there was any prior contact. What is known is that Kohberger had visited the King Road neighborhood multiple times before the murders. If it wasn't random, then it was planned. And if it was planned, then the victims weren't just in the wrong place at the wrong time. They were targets. It's rare to see a murder suspect as tightly profiled as Kohberger before trial. Prosecutors have combined physical evidence, digital records, and behavioral patterns to craft their case. Key evidence includes DNA from the knife sheath, surveillance of the white Hyundai Elantra, cell tower pings tracking his movements, eyewitness report from Dylan Mortensen, the surviving roommate, recovered materials from his apartment and car. And yet, Kohberger has maintained his innocence. He has pleaded not guilty and is currently awaiting trial. His defense team is expected to challenge the validity of the DNA match, argue against the reliability of the digital tracking, and possibly suggest that the crime scene was contaminated. But the deeper issue isn't just guilt or innocence, it's how this case unfolded so quietly for so long. How did a man walk among professors, classmates, and neighbors while allegedly planning a quadruple homicide? As Bryan Kohberger awaited trial in an Idaho jail cell, the world kept asking the same questions: who was this man? How does a man who studied justice become the face of horror? How did no one see it coming? The courtroom was packed the day he first appeared before a judge. Wearing an orange jumpsuit and bulletproof vest, Kohberger stood silent as the charges were read aloud, 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of burglary. The media flooded in. Parents, professors, and true crime community watched every frame. He showed no emotion. No visible regret. His eyes scanned the courtroom slowly, as if studying it. Prosecutors announced they would seek the death penalty. The evidence, they said, was overwhelming. But his defense team pushed back. They argued that the DNA on the knife sheath was partial. That no murder weapon had ever been found. That surveillance footage alone doesn't prove intent. And most crucially, they argued there was no clear motive. In the state of Idaho, a conviction for capital murder requires not just proof of the crime, but proof of aggravating circumstances, cruelty, premeditation, or risk to the public. And so, a battle began, not just for justice, but for understanding. In Moscow, things haven't returned to normal. The home at 1122 King Road still stands, now vacant and sealed off. Candlelight vigils were held on the university lawn. 4 crosses. 4 names. The families have spoken out, but rarely. Kaylee Goncalves' father has become a vocal figure in the press, calling for transparency and accountability. Madison's friends organized scholarship funds in her name. Ethan's siblings returned to the University of Idaho, determined to finish what he started. Xana's favorite restaurant still keeps her favorite drink on the menu. These were real people. Not just headlines and hashtags. They had hopes, relationships, routines. They weren't symbols, they were lives, cut short by someone who walked among them. One of the most disturbing themes in the Kohberger case is not just how the crime happened, but how close it came to going unsolved. If not for a discarded knife sheath, a white Hyundai Elantra, noticed on one blurry clip, or for hours of surveillance footage reviewed frame by frame. This might have been one of the most chilling cold cases in U.S. history. Kohberger had no prior record. He wasn't on any criminal database. And yet, prosecutors argue he showed intent, preparation, and obsession, the hallmarks of a predator who studied his prey. The internet took over. Some theorized that Kohberger was part of a larger conspiracy. Others claimed the surviving roommates were somehow involved. Still others believed the crime was satanic, ritualistic, or tied to secret societies. Meanwhile, families were left grieving, overshadowed by noise. This case revealed how quickly the internet can spread paranoia, and truth drowns in speculation. Kohberger's background triggered tough questions. Should criminology students be monitored more closely? Are we training people who might exploit the system? How do we spot someone shifting from academic to offender? Some experts say Kohberger fits the profile of a high-control killer, someone who doesn't act on impulse, but on calculation. There are calls now to reevaluate how we train law enforcement. To monitor students studying criminology more closely. To rethink our assumptions about who is capable of what. The case is still ongoing. His trial is scheduled, though it may be delayed due to ongoing legal motions. The defense has requested to move the trial out of Loudoun County, citing the massive media coverage. If convicted, he faces either life in prison or death by lethal injection. The victims' families continue to attend hearings, speak at rallies, and wait, for justice, for answers, for peace. Meanwhile, the world watches. Some for closure. Others for fascination. And many out of fear that if someone like Kohberger could live unnoticed for so long, maybe there are others. Was Kohberger a lone wolf, or are there other cases that match his pattern? Was this his first crime, or just the first time he got caught? Could these murders have been prevented if someone had looked closer at the warning signs? These are questions without clean answers. But they deserve to be asked. Because if we don't ask them, who will? If you made it this far, then you're not just curious. You care. You believe the truth deserves light. So hit subscribe to stay with us, because this story isn't over. More court dates. More revelations. And more questions that demand answers. Click like if you believe these victims deserve more than headlines. They deserve memory. And share this video with someone who still believes monsters only exist in stories. Because sometimes, they grade your papers. Sometimes, they pass you in the hallway. And sometimes, they wear a smile.